Okay, well, we don't know who's using this audio. So, hello from the both of us. This is James, and I'm here with the beautiful Ellie Aaron, also Ellie Wightman, who's still working on that whole transition and saying her name as we got married like 6 months ago. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing pretty good. How are you, my love?
Good. I'm doing great. I'm excited. We're going to have a conversation here. And I think it's going to be helpful as you help people with business and love and so many things. And I help so many leaders with business and love and relationships and all those things as well. And so, this topic really came about because we were in a discussion on, sometimes there's these clients or our clients are dealing with people who have said they're investing in coaching, they're investing in a container. And, sometimes there's a blip along the way. Maybe there's a challenging month around money, or they have challenges that come up. And sometimes people's response is that they send a message and they're like, hey, I need to pause, or these other things, or I can't do this right now. And we've had those moments, but the way actually through them was to work through them. And so I think we have an exciting conversation here, not only for our people, but they might be dealing with people that they'll get to share this audio with them. So I think it'll really just help people around the context of commitment, which is just like a continual practice. So, yeah, is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think committing to commitment, committing to commitment has changed so much in my own life, but I think it really is just the ingredient that I think a lot of people are actually missing and that I was missing in like actually stepping into what we're wanting to create and like actually creating it. So I think it's a very important ingredient in that.
See, you're a genius because I thought we were going to title this, right, Commitment to Love and Leadership, but I really like this idea of committing to commitment. So maybe that's going to be the title. We'll find out by the end. Um, cool. I think, we've attempted this a couple times. And isn't this a beautiful example of commitment? We've tried to talk about it a few different ways. And here we are on like the third try or second try, whatever it is. And I think we just get to really roll with this. And let's just start off with, what does commitment even mean? And you actually just looked this up, and what did you find out?
It's the state or quality of being dedicated to a cause, activity, etc. Yeah, so it's basically a state of being dedicated to something.
Yeah, and the example that they give is the company's commitment to quality. And if we know anything about companies, a lot of times there are commitment waivers. And so commitment, in my eyes, is literally a continual practice. It's something that we can always be challenged on in different ways. And so just as a company can waver, we can waver. And so it really takes intention and effort. And so I really do love this theme of commitment to commitment. So, is there any particular area you want to start with or you want to dive into that comes through for you?
Um, I think love is, I love love and I love
Love,
studying
love.
love. I love love. I love you. I love just the topic of love. And I think, yeah, I think a lot of people are challenged around love. Welcome to the human experience, right? And although we watch Disney movies and it's like the happily ever after, most movies, most stories, most like myths don't actually like talk about the day in and day out work that it actually takes to make love work with another human being. And so, more than anything, when I think of commitment when it comes to love, is at least today, is the choice to look at your own stuff and how it's actually preventing you from the love that you actually want. Whether you're in relationship or you're wanting to find your person, a lot of times it's actually our lack of commitment at looking at our own emotional patterns and our own habits that's preventing us from having the connection that we actually want with another human being. So that's what's coming to mind at first is I think in order to really feel love and to express love and to receive the love that you want, um, it's actually takes commitment to move through your own insecurities, your own vulnerabilities, your own hangups, your own stories, your own projections, just your own stuff.
Can I
Yeah,
interject?
please,
Okay.
please.
Um, because I know you can keep going. One of the things that I think might be helpful for those listening, because I know we're talking about commitment, and then there's this idea of looking at, what's coming up for them as you refer to their own stuff. What does it really mean to look at that? Because I think some people probably think they're looking at it, um, but they might just be like analyzing themselves, criticize, or as I say, analyzing themselves or criticizing.
Analyzing.
That's right. Or criticizing themselves or just like ridiculing. Um, there's some people that might just be like, well, this is just how I am. What is, in your eyes, what does it mean to look at their stuff? And then what do they do once they're looking at their stuff and they spot that?
You spot it, you got it. Um I guess, like, I mean, we're only ever seeing things through our own lenses, of course. So I can only speak from my own experience. But when it looks for, to me, when it looks like, what it looks like to really look at your own stuff is to look at the emotion of anxiety, to look at the emotion of fear, to look at your insecurities, to look at maybe the sadness or depression that you're feeling, to be aware of your own patterns. That's what I mean is like looking at your own stuff. And in order to recognize a pattern, if you're like, well, I don't really know what my pattern is, take a look at what happens to you when it comes to love, because that will show you your own pattern. Are you wanting someone who doesn't actually want you back? Are you are you getting into relationships with people who are not meeting your needs? Are you blaming your partner for not giving you what you want because you haven't actually properly asked them for it, or are shaming them because what they're giving you you feel isn't enough? Or that's what I mean. Like by looking at our own stuff, it's we're looking at our own internal stories, projections, and emotions and seeing how we may actually be a collaborator with what's happening externally. Because a lot of people would be like, well, they're doing this to me. Well, did they do that to you? Or did you continually put yourself in a particular scenario that is not actually helping you get what you want? And I will be the first person to raise my hand and be like, I was in a relationship where I didn't get my needs met for 7 years, you know? So that's not our relationship, obviously. I didn't marry that person,
We're
but
at 7 years.
we are at 7 years now. But like also I chose to stay in that dynamic. So when I say own your own stuff is, are you owning what you're choosing? Are you taking responsibility for what you're continually choosing? That's what I mean.
Yeah, so it sounds like being aware of the patterns that are showing up, and usually the patterns that are worth being aware of showing up are probably the ones that they don't like, or they find themselves complaining about, or they keep finding themselves in. And then taking responsibility to realize that's what they're choosing. Yeah, someone might be doing something, someone might be having a response, but the only reason why they're at the receiving end of that is because they keep choosing it. They're still there. And so I think, as we, I sometimes I can go into like the nitty gritty, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but I do want to help identify some nuances to help them. So you said to look at it, which I think is just, become aware. What are the things that they're finding themselves in? And then the take responsibility. Because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'll run into the people that are like, I don't know why I keep choosing it. Well, it actually doesn't fucking matter. What if you just chose differently?
Right. Exactly.
I don't know why I keep burning my hand on the stove. Well, what if you just chose to stop putting your hand on the stove? Um,
Right. Or people will say, like, it needs to get bad enough for me to make a change. What if it doesn't need to get bad enough? Like, what if you don't need to keep hitting yourself on the head in order to feel the pain and you actually chose radical self love and decided to choose something different?
Right, to actually realize their own power of choice, because until they realize that, they're always going to experience being a victim, or they're going to say, oh, this happened to them. And so they actually have to own their choices. They have to step into what's possible, and even explore what might be possible, that there are things different. Um, so this idea of commitment around love, and then they're noticing their patterns, and it sounds like the key thing is to start making different choices, instead of choosing those things. Is there anything that they can do to, right? Because it's this idea of commitment. Someone might be in a relationship that they don't like. And so there's an element of change, right? They could change it, or be a cause for that change. And, that can be tricky because you actually need the other person on board, if it's a relationship. And yeah, what other options do you see for them? Do they get support? Is this something where, obviously we have an audio, you have a podcast. The intention is for people to get help and support. Um, and obviously signing up is another level of that. Is there anything that they can do to receive support, or things that they could try to, once they have this awareness?
Well, I would say when it comes to love, and I actually talked to a woman about that this morning, is I invite you to make and this is just the example if you're not partnered right now, is or if maybe in your partnership that you're really like is not right for you, is to get really clear on the type of relationship that you want, but more so on the qualities of how you want to feel when you're with that person, whether it comes to like feeling respected and feeling valued, or feeling like there's a sense of fun and play, or feeling like there's like a person that's really willing to do the deep work with you, right? Like that was one of my values. Like, as I was calling you in, I was like, I want someone who's like willing to go deep, willing to do the deeper work with me, so that like for transformation, essentially. Like I wanted a partnership that was going to be like healing, and not only for myself but like for others, because I think when people are really in love and are really committed to love, like it impacts everyone around them. Like it's inspiring for others, not just the couple, but like their family as well and people beyond
Yeah.
that. So I don't know if that's helpful, but like thinking about the type of qualities and ways of feeling and being that you want the relationship to consist of, whether it's a current relationship that you're in and you're like, this is impossible, which maybe it is, maybe it's not, or like someone in the future that you're wanting to create a relationship with.
Yeah, everything is workable as long as you're willing to work on it. And if you're in a relationship, right, the process of relating, the other person has to be willing to work on it. You were saying something really great. I'm just trying to remember exactly what it is that caught my attention. Oh, I remember. It was the qualities, right? It really is important to identify the qualities, because most people are just kind of like a, pinball machine. They're hitting up against everything, and moving around, and it's banging up against them. And so it's really important to choose what you want and the qualities, so that way when those things show up, not only are you helping create that and moving towards it, but you'll know it when it's there. On the other side of this, maybe not the other side, but in relationship to this, um, sometimes the qualities that we want don't match what we're familiar with. Like I think, something that you and I have spoken about before, maybe even in an audio, is sometimes what we can look for in a relationship are the things that maybe we see online or others have. And they might be interesting qualities, but do they ultimately create what we want? And, I've had, um, I've had partners where there might have been elements there that were appealing when I was younger, but it actually didn't make for a healthy relationship or the full or fulfilling relationship that I wanted, like we have. And so it actually involved letting go a lot of different things. It involves saying, I'm more committed to the result rather than like maybe short-term satisfaction or other things. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's really important. And I think that's an element of commitment because otherwise we'd have the thing right now. So I think when we're committing to something, we're actually evolving, we're actually growing. It's like this idea of goals. It's not about the achievement of them, it's about who we become in the process. And so there are going to be these challenges that do arise.
I love this. Yeah, I think you tied that back really beautifully on how commitment, yeah, really applies to love in terms of thinking about the long term versus the short term satisfaction when it comes to choosing the right partner. I think people will often like write off different things like the silliest little things that don't match up to the lists that they've made and what they're looking for. People will make like lists, like they have to have a this and a this and a this, brown hair, 5'6", like whatever the frick people write. I don't even know. And then if like the person in front of them doesn't match up to that, but yet they're like, there's something interesting here. There's something wonderful here. Like they'll often write off people that are actually healthy for them because they don't match up for like what they had in their mind, the
And
imaginary person they had in their mind.
well, and this actually applies to goals very much as well. If we're too defined in what we want, we're actually eliminating a lot of opportunity and keeping away what might actually be meant for us in our life. That's something that I worked through at the beginning of our relationship is actually even before our relationship. I think I heard an audio where someone said, what if you could have opportunity or people come into your life that didn't match exactly what you had predetermined? And when I ended up focusing on the qualities of a person, that's actually when you arrived, right? And this is the most fulfilling, loving relationship I've ever had. And we were married, and that's a whole other level of commitment. And I actually had to realize I was keeping out a lot of what was available in life because I was predetermining a lot of things or it had to look a certain way. And then get caught up when I wasn't getting what I wanted or things didn't work out how I'd like, but I was dismissing all the things that were actually truly available. And so I'm glad I woke up to that. It took a lot of work because I and I remember I had seen a therapist about this because whatever was happening subconsciously in the background, I thought that if a piece didn't match the exact vision, then I wouldn't have the full vision or everything would crumble if that piece wasn't there. And the truth is, I was actually having a small vision, and instead of stepping into what was truly there, all the opportunity that was available, I was actually minimizing in the name of safety or security. Yeah. And so I think this is really about the adventure in life and just like, yeah, everything that's there for us. And usually we're swimming in it and it's right around us.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like wondering how vulnerable. we get to get, or I get to get here, with our people, because yeah, it's I think it's really like when you're asking yourself what you want to be committed to when it comes to love, when it comes to leadership, like I think that's a really good question, because I guess you have to define when you think of love, like what does it actually mean for you to be fully loved? And that's the commitment that you get to make to create that, right? Like, and I think it actually does mean different things for each person, and at the same time I think there's like a through line of what it means for everybody, but also everyone's map of love is so different. Like if you grew up and there you were taught, you saw certain things and you were taught that love is like yelling, right? A lot of people come from like dysfunctional households, like that arguing and yelling was like that's love because that's what you saw your parents do, right? So now you bring that to your adult partnership and you're like, well, this is love. We just yell at each other all the time. And it's like, well, is that what you want love to be? Is that actually what you want love to be? So I think when we say commitment to love, commitment to leadership, we need to define what love and leadership actually is for that individual person, because it is, yeah, I think that's really an important part of it.
And and is that what they want? Because I think part of this is, especially, leadership and love are two roles that are very much relating to others. You need other people there. And there are going to be different maps that actually cross. And it ends up being a lot around communication, right? Like, we have worked with different professionals, right, to understand how to communicate better. Because usually, a lot of times, people do want similar or same things. It's just their way of going about it is different. And so I think, we're reaching these two levels here in terms of love, where it's, how do you keep that commitment? How long do you keep it for? And when is it appropriate to quit commitment? Um, Nobody necessarily wants to end a relationship or those types of things, but I think they also don't want to be in a relationship where it's horrible day after day and nothing is happening. And I've seen some people in that, but they're the only ones doing the work. And so I'm
Yeah.
just curious what you would advise someone, because I feel like someone, maybe is single looking for love, that's a little different. That's like they get to work on themselves and build a foundation and connect with different people and really search that out. And then there's some people that have been in a relationship, and how do they keep their commitment? How long to keep the commitment? When is it appropriate to quit that type of commitment? Um, yeah, I'm just curious on your take.
Well, I'm curious on your take too. What do you think?
Well, I think it's standards, right? Like, that's why I always emphasize the other person has to be willing to do the work, because I mean, wouldn't it fucking suck to just be like, this is as good as it's gonna get? Um, and I think people come together, and they come together because they love each other, and they get married because they love each other, and there's a lot of love there. And so I think my take would be, I get to be at cause for my life. And so it's willing to have courageous conversations, make invitations, um, do personal work, and do our best to be a stand for the relationship and help, someone move forward. But ultimately, you can only do that so long, right? And I think people try, so you have to have some like grace for growth. Is the other person trying? Are they actually showing up? Are they giving it a go? Are you actually seeing elements of improvement? Because as long as they're putting in the effort, they're at least giving it a try, they haven't checked out, they've been in conversations. I think those things are very valid. And sometimes things take longer than others, but isn't it wonderful that you like have a lifetime of growth together? Or is a person totally not growing? They're siloing themselves off. If, even when you try to engage in a conversation, they push you away. And don't get me wrong, like things happen in relationship, but it's more about what's happening 80% of the time. Because you want the 80 to 90% to at least be good, growth, enjoyable. And yeah, I mean, if it were me, I'd probably have a personal timeline. That's kind of my thinking that I'd say, you know what? Let me give it a go. Let me have it be a good shot. And what's an appropriate like timeline to really give this a go? Um, yeah.
Totally. Totally. You know, I think it's so much easier when you actually have like a growth oriented person that you're in relationship with.
Yeah.
And I think you get to choose that. You get to choose someone who is growth oriented, meaning, are they willing to look at themselves? Are they willing to look at their patterns? Are they willing to keep growing and developing and evolving as a human being? And are they willing to do that for the relationship as well? Because our relationship now, 7 years in, is not the same that it was 5 years ago or even a year ago, right? Like we're continually growing and evolving together. And so
Sometimes we're lifting each other up.
sometimes I think a lot of
Oftentimes.
times we're lifting each other up and we're lifting ourselves up. And I'm just having an image of literally of us lifting each other up. But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty, right? That's that you have this person. I feel like all these quotes are coming to me of like we like to have the reason why we want to fall in love so much is because we want to have and get married is ultimately because we want to have someone be a witness to our life. Like we want someone to witness us in our growth, right? And witness us in change as the lifetime goes by, because we won't be the same person we will be in 5 years, right? Like we want to have a family. We're going to step into new identities. That like things are going to shift. Are you willing to do the growth together? Are you willing to come back to love together? So, yeah, like I would say, are you like if you're curious about if you should leave or if you should stay, I would ask, does this person have the same vision and commitment to love as I do together? Right? And are they at least willing to play? Are they willing to have the conversation? And if they're not willing, is that really the human being that you're wanting to choose to build a life with?
Yeah. I think that's very fruitful. And I think a nuance here is it doesn't mean that they have to want exactly what you want.
Totally.
Um, and this is where the qualities are really important, right? Where, maybe someone's an entrepreneur and they're in business, but their significant other, maybe they are working a 9 to 5 or they're in corporate, but are they doing things that, do they want to go on similar vacations as you? Or do they like the idea of starting like a raised garden bed? Do they have a hobby? Are there things that also bring you together? It doesn't have to be the exact same things. Um,
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. I'm almost being called to, but I feel like there might be more you want to share. I'm almost being called to how this would apply in self-leadership, right?
Yeah.
When is appropriate to keep a commitment? When is it appropriate to quit a commitment? But before we move on there, is there anything else you want to share here?
No, I think there's so much more we could say, but I think this is a great segue to talk about self-leadership and commitment. I love
And
it.
if people want more, they can, write in, ask questions, or, just shoot us a message because that will inspire us to talk about more. Because I think there's just so much we could talk about, and we're just choosing, this is the beginning part of the journey. So I believe in self-leadership, right? It's this idea of having goals. Maybe there's something they've committed to. Perhaps it's going to a fitness center. We've done that. Perhaps it's signing up for coaching. That's something we continuously do. And I think when people first start these things, usually there's a hump to get over to even do it. I think of this as the movie, right? Like there's the happily ever after. They usually have a lot of the struggle or challenges and the stories happening, and then they reach the pinnacle and it's like happily ever after. But there's more after that. And so I think whenever we have these goals that we set out on, there usually is some of this turbulence or struggle or challenge, and we say, you know what, this is what I'm going to choose to commit to. This is the difference that I want to make. And technically that'd be the end of the movie, but we all know it's not the end of the movie. And you enter into whatever the commitment is. Maybe you're going to the gym, or perhaps you're in the coaching program and you're working on something new. And all of a sudden, feelings arise, thoughts arise, because you are in this new challenge and you
Dun
are
dun
there.
dun.
That's right. You're there, you're on the court. And maybe you go to lift the weight and it's actually really, really heavy for you. Or maybe you go to pay another month for the program and you made a year commitment, and 6 months in, there's a challenging month in the business and you have all these doubts come up. I can't pay, I got to pause, all these different things. The old pattern, the old response is to quit, is to stop, is to exit, go back to what you know, that it's familiar. However, it's a wonderful opportunity to actually truly step into the commitment and say, I want to have a conversation around this and just share what's happening for me and the old thoughts or old stories that are coming up. Um, or here's how I learned to respond to things. And so this is where I think is a beautiful opportunity, as you would say, to look at the stuff. What is it that's actually coming up? Because if we're just keeping it to ourselves, nothing's ever going to happen to it, because we're trying to solve something on the same level of the problem that was created. And so we actually need these outside views, not from the people who don't have the results that you want, but from the people that do have the results that you want, because they've been through it before. So I feel like I can go on a whole spree here. I'm just going to pause. Anything you want to share? Anything that I'm saying that you want to add to?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, just like in fitness stuff and in coaching and mentorship, or like any activity that you're like wanting to grow and build, or like a skill that you're wanting to grow, or yeah, I mean specifically like with self-leadership, I think something that you're saying that's really beautiful is we get to like stop and pause and then continue onwards towards the thing that we want to create. And I think a lot of people, because they've paused, will just pause. And then that's the end of that goal. It's almost like when people go on like a diet, just to give like a diet example, is they have 2 or 3 bad days or whatever, quote, bad days, right? There's
Mhm.
just, it's just food, but they'll
Their
have,
interpretation. Yeah, their
right.
interpretation of the day was that it
They'll
was
have,
bad. Yeah.
yes, yes. They'll have like cookies or ice cream or whatever it is. And they're like, well, that's done. I might as well give up on the dream, versus being like, it was literally a blip in the road and here we go. And we get to like hop back on. And so I think when it comes to commitment, people think it's all or nothing. It's not all or nothing. It's literally all, and then everything else with that comes with all of it on the way to the goal, and the blips and the mishaps and falling off the horse, like that's inevitable. So what if you actually expected those things to happen and then just decided and committed to just come back? And I think shame has a lot to do with this, because if we committed to a particular outcome and then the actions that we're taking is not is not creating that outcome, right? Whether it comes to your business or love life or whatever. The shame comes in, the spiraling comes in. It's never going to happen. The result isn't here yet. Versus knowing like you can create whatever you want in your life, period. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe you can create whatever you want in your life. And so when you know that, when you decide that, what if every time it didn't work out or you fell off the bandwagon, you just literally get to hop back on until you create the result? And what if you let go of the shame and you knew that falling off the bandwagon was just a part of it? And that didn't, it just meant that you were human. And so I think in order to commit to something, we have to know that at different times we're gonna quote mess up and that that's okay, you know?
Yeah, and the only way you can get it wrong is actually by not doing it, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
And it's part of the process. You don't see a child, you don't see a baby crawling and then they're just like not good at it.
Totally.
That doesn't happen. They approach it as, okay, this worked, this didn't work, and they keep aiming for it, and or walking, whatever it might be, or just because they're walking and then they fall down doesn't mean they're a bad walker. I
Totally.
mean, that'd just be really odd. And so I think these are thoughts that occur for people. And I had to learn this in our relationship and through a lot of work is what I thought was the pressure that was helping me was actually the pressure that was holding me back. Because I thought if I just put enough pressure on myself, and you hear these quotes like pressure makes diamonds, and I was like, well, this diamond fucking collapsed, like it's gotten incinerated. And so
Are you in? No, don't get incinerated, James.
and so that type of pressure just actually wasn't really helpful because it created a lot of shame and a lot of like picking myself apart. And so I really try to help clients understand how to honor their pace, how to give themselves grace when these different things show up, because it's more about the consistency and the persistence to move towards more of what they want. And the vision and the goals and the commitment are less about we're going to reach this magic moment and then all of a sudden everything's great. It's more like a horizon that's continually moving. It's continually evolving and we're filling in these details. And so yeah, I think it's more about letting yourself evolve as the vision evolves and not just quitting simply because it's not going exactly how to reference from the past, how you predetermine, because what you predetermine might actually be the thing that's holding you back. And so yeah, I think that could be really good. And then on the other side of that, when do you actually quit a commitment? And for me, I think this is a less about the commitment and more about the process. So for instance, let's say someone does want to lose weight and they go on a diet, but the diet is horrible for them.
Mhm.
They hate it. They aren't getting all their nutrients. It's honestly torture. I don't think what they're quitting is the commitment to their goal. I think it's actually, like you said, catching a beat, pausing, reassessing. What's the way I can reapproach this or go about it in a way that's actually aligned or supportive? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Is the thing actually serving you? Um, yeah. I mean, sometimes you do find that with certain mentors and people, although I haven't really had that happen in a while. I feel like I choose pretty good mentors, but it's like, okay, this isn't actually the right fit, or let's change or change course. I mean, yeah, the goal, I guess, doesn't have to shift, but maybe like you're saying, the process needs to shift in how you're reaching the goal.
Right. And sometimes I've been in so many programs. Sometimes it's also just the way I was treating the program.
Sure.
And it had to do with that pressure. Like I was putting so much pressure on myself, I wasn't getting the results because the pressure that I put on myself made it unbearable. It made it challenging to take the actions. And this is something that I've had to work through. You're able to hear a lot of different directions. Like we can listen to an audio and you're like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. I'm just going to run with this and I'm going to make a post or a video or I'm going to talk to somebody about it. Or you're able to implement it. When I would listen to stuff, for whatever reason, I had taken in my brain, it was almost, I would hear the same audio and I'd be like, here's all the stuff I'm not measuring up to. And I was like, well, that's not why I'm in the program. And so it made it unenjoyable because of my interpretation of it, because of my approach, because of the way that I was treating it. And so there wasn't anything wrong with the process. It's the way that I was utilizing the process or treating it.
Hmm.
Same thing in a relationship. If What would be an example, instead of me thinking of it, what would be an example in a relationship where I think dates, right? Or you'd say,
Hmm.
oh, I want to go on a hike. I would hear a hike and I'd picture us climbing a mountain. You pictured us taking a walk through the woods.
Yeah.
That's so much easier than what I was picturing when I heard those things. Or, I think when I hear the word date, I just pictured someone in a movie showing up with like flowers and all these extravagant things. But then you'd be like, James, you take me on dates all the time. You're like, hey, do you want to go out to this place to eat? Let's go. And, then we'd go. Or I'd say, hey, I have an adventure plan for us. And that's just who I was and the things that I did. But the terminology or the way that I treated the terminology, for some reason, I thought it was like these otherworldly things that felt like big and impossible. And so anytime we treat something as big, we're actually treating it as like very complex and difficult. And so I think things in love and relationship actually get to be um, very, very easeful. They can actually be very possible and doable and practical and fun. Same thing with leadership, right? Like I might tell people to have a courageous conversation. Well, it's courageous because it's the conversations that most people aren't having, but it's still a conversation that's doable and just like opening it up.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Beautiful.
you're beautiful.
Beautiful. Thanks, hon. I love you.
I love you. Where do you feel we're at? In terms of this, we've painted some pictures of commitment, looking at what's happening for them, really identifying the qualities to look for, to be open instead of it just being predetermined of what they think it has to look like. We've talked about giving themselves grace, honoring their pace, bridging communication with other people and leadership. That's important, right? I feel like love is so close to leadership and people with their teams. Like it's actually just bridging the communication and being able to have those conversations. And what do those agreements even look like? Are you on the same page? And we also talked about, when is it appropriate to quit? When is it appropriate to change the process? Is there anything else you want to explore that you think could be helpful or useful, or does this feel good?
This feels great. I think we can, of course, have more conversations. Um, and I love you.
And I love you, and I love who's ever listening. Not to the same level I love Ellie, but I do love you. And, if you have a question, let us know. If you're in a certain situation or scenario, let us know that too, because maybe there's a take we can share, or, there's always more that we could share. But right now we're just working with a blank canvas, and this is what has come through.
Beautiful. Bye, everybody. Love you all.
Bye, ta-da, toodaloo, ta-ta,
Au revoir.
auf
Shalom.
Wiedersehen.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.